I didn't start suspecting my wife because of lipstick on a collar or some late-night text lighting up her phone. It started with an empty metal folding chair beside me at Call's memorial service. The church smelled like polished wood and oldenness. The coffee in the lobby had gone cold before anyone touched it. I kept the folded program in my suit pocket, creasing it harder every time the door opened and it was her. People leaned in and whispered, "She coming?" I nodded like I knew. But Linda's phone went straight to voicemail. By the final prayer, that empty chair felt louder than the organ, and all I could think was, wherever she was, she had chosen it over standing next to me. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the porch light had clicked on, same as it did every evening at 7. Our house sat on a quiet street outside Dayton, with maples along the curb and mailbox is leaning from too many Ohio winters. That was the life Linda and I had built. Not pretty enough for a magazine. Not troubled enough for anyone to check on. Just steady. Just ours. We'd been married 23 years. I managed inventory at a truck parts warehouse off Route 35. Linda worked part-time at the public library, shelving returns and helping retirees print boarding passes they swore the computer had eaten. Our daughter, Emily, was 2 states away at college. Old enough to forget to call and young enough to still text me for gas money. Inside, the dishwasher clattered. A bottle of fish oil sat beside the toaster, next to my blood pressure pills and Linda's reading glasses. The magnetic calendar on the fridge was crowded with oil changes, dentist appointments, library shifts, and her eat note trash out Thursday. For years, I thought that meant I knew everything worth knowing. Linda was at the sink when I came in, wearing jeans and an old gray sweatshirt from one of Emily's school fundraisers. She turned at the sound of my keys. "You okay?" she asked. I wanted to say, "Where were you?" Instead, I loosened my tie and dropped my keys in a ceramic bowl by the chargers. "Long day," I said. She nodded and opened the microwave. Meatloaf, green beans, mashed potatoes with a dent where the butter had melted in. Normal food. Normal kitchen. My wife drying her hands on a dish towel like nothing in the world had shifted. That was what made it hurt worse. After dinner, we watched the local news without really watching. She sat at one end of the couch, me at the other, blue light moving over our faces. The space between us was no wider than a laundry basket. But it felt like that empty chair had followed me home. The first Tuesday she stayed late. I barely noticed. Linda mentioned it while we brushed our teeth. Both of us bent toward the same sink like we had been for half our lives. "They're starting a community reading program," she said, her voice muffled by foam. "Kids mostly, some adults too." I told Marlene I could help Tuesday nights for a while. I rinsed and nodded. "Sounds good." That was marriage after 23 years. You trusted the sentences that came with pajamas and toothpaste. You didn't hold them up to the light. After that, Tuesday became her late night. I'd eat whatever she left under foil, sit at the kitchen table with the radio turned low, and sort junk mail into piles nobody needed. Around 9:30, sometimes closer to 10, her headlights would slide across the blinds. She always came in quietly. "Long one?" I'd ask. "Yeah," she'd say, easing off her shoes. More people than they expected. At first, I was proud of her. Linda had a gift for helping people without making them feel foolish. She could explain a library computer or a government form as if needing help was the most ordinary thing in the world. Then the little things began to gather weight. One night, she walked straight past the kitchen. "I'm going to rinse off," she called. The shower started before I could answer. When she came back, her hair was damp at the ends, and the hallway smelled like the lavender soap she usually saved for Sunday mornings. She lifted her clothes from the hamper and carried them to the washer. Even though laundry day was Saturday. "Want me to throw mine in?" I asked. "No, I've got it," she said too fast. Her blue cardigan lay over the basket, one sleeve still wet, as if she'd spilled something or been caught in rain we hadn't had. On the counter, her lunch container sat unopened, except for 2 bites of a turkey sandwich wrapped back in wax paper. Linda hated wasting food. She had eaten a bruised peach just to prove it still had sweetness left. The next morning, I borrowed her car because mine was nearly empty. In the console, beneath tissues and old grocery receipts, I found a gas slip from the west side of town. Not near the library. Not near anything she had mentioned. I stared at it until the numbers blurred, then folded it back exactly as I'd found it, ashamed of my own hands. I told myself one receipt was not a confession. People drove across town. People bought gas where it was cheap. But suspicion, once it sits down in your house, starts acting like family. That Friday, I came home early after a delivery truck knocked out power to half the warehouse. Linda's car was in the driveway. A brown Amazon box leaned by the front door, one quarter crushed. Inside, the house felt quiet. I changed my shirt, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my phone when the doorbell app flashed. Motion detected at 1:17. The video was grainy black and white. Wind rushed over the microphone. For a moment there was only the porch, the box, and Linda's green gardening clogs under the step. Then a man stepped into frame. He was tall, not young, wearing a baseball cap low and a dark jacket zipped up. He didn't ring, he just waited like he belonged there. My thumb went still, the door opened, and Linda came out in the same blue cardigan she'd worn Tuesday night. She glanced back before pulling the door closed. Quick, maybe innocent, maybe not. The man said something the wind swallowed. Linda folded her arms, then unfolded them. He handed her something small, maybe an envelope. She slipped it under her cardigan so fast I almost missed it. Then they walked off together. The clip ended. I sat there listening to the refrigerator hum, staring at my own reflection in the dark phone screen. Great amples, tight mouth. A man I didn't much like. Linda came home around for with bananas, milk, and the store-brand crackers I ate with soup. "You're home early," she said. "Warehouse lost power." "Oh." She put the milk away. "That's nice, I guess." I watched her hands. One knuckle had a thin reed scrape. "Somebody came by today," I said. She stopped with the crackers halfway into the cabinet. "Who?" "That's what I'm asking." She closed the cabinet gently. Too gently. "A man," I said, on the camera. Her face shifted for half a second, like a curtain moving. "Oh, someone from the library volunteer group." "What volunteer group?" "The outreach program. You said Tuesdays." "It's connected. Where did you go with him?" She wiped her palm over a clean counter. "Mark. It was just a quick errand." "What kind?" Her eyes moved toward the hallway. "Nothing worth turning into a fight." That hurt more than an answer. I thought of Cole's memorial, the empty chair beside me, the folded program in my jacket pocket. I wanted to ask if this man knew where she had been that day. Instead, I flattened the grocery bag on the table. "Okay," I said. Linda exhaled like we were finished. We weren't. The question had only gone quiet, and quiet things have room to grow. After that afternoon, I became someone I didn't like. I didn't hire anyone. I didn't follow Linda in my truck. I didn't put a tracker under her bumper like a fool in a bad movie. I just started noticing too much. Her phone stayed face down on the counter. She carried it to the linen closet, to the laundry room, even out to water the basil on the deck. If it buzzed once, her eyes moved before the sound had finished. One Thursday evening, while I was in the den paying the electric bill, her phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at me. "I should take this." She didn't say who. The backed or opened and shut. Through the wall came the low murmur of her voice from the garage. Not words, just secrecy with a shape to it. I sat with my finger on the mouse, the cursor blinking in the password box. I remembered when she used to take calls beside me, stretching the curly cord from the kitchen wall phone while Emily colored at the table. Back then, nothing in our life needed a closed door. When she came in, her cheeks were pink. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just library stuff." Library stuff was starting to sound like a locked cabinet. The next morning, Hurting jacket hung over a kitchen chair. I was carrying coffee to the sink when I saw one pocket bulging. I told myself to leave it alone. I even turned away. Then I turned back. Inside were a grocery receipt, a lint wipe peppermint, and a folded square of notebook paper, soft from being handled. My thumb shook as I opened it. An address was written in blue ink. East of town, near the county line. Under it wharf, or words. Don't tell Mark. I stood there until my coffee went cold. Not surprise Mark. Not ask Mark. Don't tell Mark. My own name looked strange, like I was a man people discussed after he left the room. I folded the paper along the same creases and slid it back, turning the peppermint the way it had been. At work, my body showed up without me. Men asked questions. I answered. A pallet was mislabeled. I fixed it. Someone laughed near the loading dock, and I looked over to Fast. That night, I didn't ask Linda anything. I watched. She chopped onions for chili and wiped her eyes with her wrist. She hummed half a line of an old song, then stopped when she noticed me in the doorway. What? She said. Nothing. You're staring. Just tired. For a second, she looked like she might come to me. Then the pot sputtered, and she turned back to the stove. I began keeping notes in my head. Tuesday, home at 9:47. Thursday, garage call, 7 minutes. Saturday, address in jacket. No lunch eaten. Scrape on right wrist. Each detail was small enough to be innocent and sharp enough to cut. At bedtime, Linda set her book down and turned off her lamp. Good night, she said softly. I lay beside her in the dark, listening to the furnace breathe through the vents. Between us were 6 inches of mattress and 23 years of marriage. I wanted to reach for her hand. Instead, I kept mine still. The next Tuesday, I told Linda I had inventory until late. I kissed her cheek by the back door, like a decent husband, and felt the warmth of her skin stay on my mouth after she pulled away. Don't wait up, I said. She looked at me a second too long. You either, at 6:20. I parked behind the closed dry cleaner across from the library. Rain freckled the windshield. A paper cup of gas station coffee sat between my knees, going cold while I gripped the wheel. I hated myself. Not enough to leave. Linda's Subaru was in the lot, but the library was mostly dark. At 6:43, she came out the side entrance with a canvas tote on her shoulder. Jeans. Old sneakers. The tan coat with the missing button I kept meaning to fix. Then the man from the porch stepped out behind her. On my phone. HED been a blur. Under the parking lot lamps, he became real broad shoulders. Gray beard. Cap pulled low. He said something. Linda touched his sleeve with 2 fingers. My stomach dropped. They got into his dark pickup. She didn't look around. Somehow that made it worse. Like secrecy had become so ordinary, she no longer had to be careful. I followed through wet streets, keeping 2 cars between us. They didn't duck up toward a restaurant or motel. They went past the strip mall, past the high school football field, into an older neighborhood where the houses sat close and tired. The pickup stopped at a small brick duplex with a wheelchair ramp instead of steps. I parked half a block back beneath a bare maple. Through the rain, I watched the man carry Linda's tote. She unlocked the door like she had done it before. Before going in, she turned to him. He leaned close. I stopped breathing. His hand rose to the side of her face. Maybe he brushed away rain. Maybe he cupped her cheek. From where I sat, there was no difference. Then Linda stepped forward and put both arms around his waist. It was a hungry hug. That almost made it worse. It was quiet and heavy. The kind people give when something is already broken. The porch light threw their joined shadows against the brick. I remembered her holding me that way after Emily was born, after my mother's funeral, after I lost my first warehouse job and came home, pretending I was scared. A lamp came on inside. Through thin curtains, I saw shapes. Linda, the man, and someone lower, maybe seated. Then the curtain snapped shut. My phone buzzed. Linda's still at work? I stared until the letters blurred. For one wild second, I wanted to storm up that ramp and make everyone tell me the truth. Instead, I sat under that dead tree and typed with numb fingers. Yeah? Long night. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then me too. The porch light went off. And the duplex vanished into the rain. Whatever Linda was doing inside became something my mind was free to ruin. I made it home before she did. I don't remember the drive. Only the wipers snapping back and forth in my hands clamped around the wheel. When I pulled into our driveway, the porch light blinked on like it did every night, polite and ordinary, as if nothing had cracked open. Inside, the house smelled faintly of Chilean lemon dish soap. Her mug sat in the sink with a handful of lipstick on the rim. I stood there in my wet coat, staring at it like a fool, waiting for a coffee cup to explain my marriage. Then her headlights swept across the curtains. The garage door rumbled. She came in through the laundry room with rain in her hair and her purse stuffed tight against her ribs. She looked exhausted. Not guilty. Exactly. Exhausted. Hey, she said softly. You're home. Where were you? Her hand froze on the dryer. At the library. I laughed once, and it sounded meaner than I meant it to. Don't. Mark. Don't say library to me again. She set her purse on the washer with careful fingers, like sudden movements might set me off. Maybe they would have. I stepped closer, then stopped because I didn't trust the anger in my own body. I saw you, I said. The refrigerator hummed between us. Water dripped from her coat onto the tile. You followed me? I found the address in your jacket. The one with the note that said not to tell me. My voice broke on that last part. Who is he? Her eyes closed. That hurt worse than any denial. Please sit down, she whispered. I've been sitting down for weeks. At dinner. In the den. In church with an empty chair beside me, while people kept looking over like they were sorry for me. I pointed toward the front room, though there was nothing there but dark furniture and old carpet. Who is he? Linda? Hey, she asked, not what you think. Then tell me what to think. Her thumb rubbed the strap of her purse. The same nervous motion she used when Emily was little and sickened. We were waiting for test results. For 1 second, that memory softened me. Then I saw the porch again. His hand near her face. Her arms around him. You held him, I said. She looked down. 23 years, I said. Mortgage payments, braces, funerals, your mother's stroke, my layoff, all of it. And now I'm standing in my own kitchen, begging my wife to admit there's another man. There isn't, she said. Then, while her mouth trembled. Because I was scared. Of me? No. She shook her head hard. Of what the truth would do to you. That sentence landed heavy and stayed there. I gripped the counter until the edge bit into my palm. You don't get to use me as the reason you lied to me. I know. You missed Call's memorial. I know. You turned your phone off. I know. Stop saying that. Her shoulders folded inward. Rain had flattened her hair against her temples, and there was that red scrape on her wrist again. Raw and angry looking. I pointed at it. Did he do that? She looked at her wrist like she'd forgotten it belonged to her. No. Then, what the hell is happening? She pressed both hands over her mouth. A broken sound slipped through anyway. Not dramatic. Not pretty. Just tired. Part of me wanted to reach for her. The rest of me was still outside that strange house, watching my life from the curb. I need the truth, I said. Now. Not tomorrow. Not when you decide I can handle it. She lowered her hands. I can't tell you all of it here. I stared at her. That is not good enough. I know. She unzipped her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her fingers shook so badly it whispered. But, if you come with me in the morning, you'll show you. I didn't take it. What is that? An address, she said. A different one. I looked from the paper to the woman I had loved most of my adult life. And for the first time, I didn't know how to stand near her. Sleep in the guest room, I said. Her face crumpled, but she nodded. She walked past me without touching my sleeve. Down the hall, the guest room door closed with a quiet click. On the washer, her purse sat open. On the floor, rainwater spread in small dark dots between us. I didn't sleep. At 5, the guest bathroom shower started. Pipes knocked behind the wall. I sat on our bed in yesterday's jeans, the folded address damp in my palm. Linda came into the kitchen at 6:30 with wet hair. No makeup? Wearing the gray sweater with the loose scuff. "You'll drive," she said. "No," I told her. "I will." We rode in silence past the interstate, the dealerships, and the breakfast places, until the address led us to a load-in building behind the county medical center. The sign read, Maple Ridge Transitional Care, Rehabilitation and Long-Term Support. I stared at it. "What is this?" Linda's hands were clenched in her lap. "Please come inside." The lobby smelled of disinfectant, burnt coffee, and vending machine sugar. A television played to no one. An old woman slept in a wheelchair by the window with a stuffed bear tucked under one arm. At the desk, Linda said, "We're here to see Mr. Harlan Pierce." My father's name hit me like a hand to the chest. "No," I said. Linda turned. Her eyes were already wet. I hadn't heard that full name in 15 years. Not since I told a nurse that if he wanted family, he could call the bottle that raised him. Not since I made him dead in my mind while he was still breathing somewhere. Woman in scrubs lowered her voice. "He had a rough night. But she's awake." I looked at my wife. "You've been coming here?" She nodded. "With him?" I asked, still meeting somewhere to put the anger. "Caleb is his case manager," she said. "The man from the porch. He's been helping with paperwork." The porch. The rain. The hug. In my memory, it shifted unwillingly into something else. Not romance. Exhaustion. Comfort. Two people standing outside. Bad news. Linda pulled a folder from her purse. Insurance letters. Invoices. An advance directive. My father's name printed again and again in black ink. "He fell in September," she said. "A neighbor found him. The hospital had your number from years ago. They called the house while you were at work. You should have told me." "I know." Small words. True ones. "He asked them not to upset you," she whispered. "Then he asked for me. He remembered my name. I don't know how." Down the hall. Someone coughed behind a half-closed door. Car rattled over tile. "The Tuesdays," I said. "Here. And the duplex belongs to Caleb's mother. She notarized documents because your father can't travel." I almost laughed. But nothing came out. All those nights, I had built a filthy little movie in my head, scene by scene, while Linda had been sitting under fluorescent lights beside my ruined old man. Why hide it? Her face tightened. "Because every time his name came up, you turned to stone. Because at your mother's funeral, you said if he walked in, you'd walk out. I thought I could handle the practical parts and spare you. By lying to me." "Yes," she said, "by lying." She handed me a photograph. My father sat in a wheelchair by a window, thin and white-bearded, one side of his mouth slack. In his lap was a Toledo Mud Hens cap I remembered from childhood, from before the drinking swallowed the good years. On the back, in shaky blue pen, were for words, "Tell Mark I'm sorry." My hand trembled. I hated that it did. Linda didn't touch me. She stood close enough for me to feel her warmth, far enough to let me choose what kind of man I would be next. A door opened down the hall, and Caleb stepped out with tired eyes and a crooked badge. "Mr. Pierce?" he asked gently. For a second, I didn't know which one of us he meant. Caleb led us into a small room with a round table, a tissue box torn open at one corner, and vending machines humming through the wall. Linda sat. I kept standing, holding the photograph like it might burn me. My father's handwriting stayed in my head. "Tell Mark I'm sorry." For most of my life, sorry had been a word people used after the damage had already moved and untaken a chair. Sorry didn't fix drywall. Sorry didn't stop my mother from looking toward the driveway whenever headlights passed. Sorry didn't give a boy at the top of the stairs his sleep back. I put the photo on the table. Caleb explained things softly. Stroke. Discharge plan. No assets. Limited speech. Possible guardianship. I heard the words without catching all of them. Linda answered when I couldn't. Then I looked at her hands. The scrape on her wrist. Caleb said, came from a metal file cabinet at the county office. Her knuckles were cracked, the skin around her wedding ring raw from washing too much. Not a lover's hands. Not guilty hands. Exactly. Tired hands. Hands that had been carrying a secret because I had made one name in our house impossible to say. After Caleb stepped out to make copies, Linda whispered, "I should have told you." The vending machine kicked on. "Yeah?" I said. She flinched, and I hated that I had put that reflex in her. I rubbed the edge of the photograph with my thumb, and I should have asked better. I added. Her eyes lifted to mine. "I saw what I wanted to see," I said. "I saw you lying. And then I saw every old wound my father left behind. I turned you into proof before I gave you a chance to be my wife. I was afraid you'd hate me for helping him." "I don't hate you." The answer came quickly, before I knew whether it was completely true. Then it settled, heavy and real. "I'm angry," I said. "I'm hurt. I don't know what to do with any of this. But I don't hate you." She nodded, tears shining. But she didn't reach for me. I was grateful. I was ready to be touched. And I was ready to be alone. Through the narrow window, an orderly pushed an empty wheelchair past the door. One will squeaked every few turns. I thought of Call's memorial. The folded program in my pocket. The empty chair beside me. I had believed Linda chose someone else over my grief. Now I knew she had been standing inside, another grief I had refused to name. That didn't make the lie smaller. It only made the hurt wider. Caleb returned with a blue folder. "You don't have to decide anything today." I almost laughed. I had been deciding things my whole life without knowing it. I picked up the photograph again. My father looked fragile in it, but memory didn't. Memory still wore boots. Memory still slammed doors. Linda waited beside me, quiet. For the first time, I didn't ask where she had been. I looked at those shaky blue words and tried to imagine walking down the hall. I stood so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. Linda flinched, then looked ashamed that she had. That hurt worse than my anger. "I'm not going in there to make peace," I said. "I know. I'm going because I'm tired of letting one closed door run my whole life." Her mouth trembled. "Okay." The hallway felt longer than it was. A game show blared from one room. A nurse laughed softly at the desk. The air smelled like applesauce, bleach, and old coffee. My shoes made dull sounds on the wax tile. Outside room 214. I stopped. Linda stood beside me, not touching me. Her hands were red and cracked from all the washing she had done in that place. I looked at those hands and remembered them packing Emily's lunches, tying ribbon on Christmas gifts, pressing between my shoulders the night my mother died. "I made you the villain," I said. She shook her head. "I gave you reasons. Not for what I accused you of." Neither of us moved. Then I opened the door. My father looked smaller than the bed. Grain on slip socks, barely lifted the blanket. A plastic cup of red Jell-O sat untouched on the tray. His hand lay curled near his chest. Blue veins under paper-thin skin. His beard was whitened uneven. For 1 second, I saw him in our old kitchen, broad-shouldered, smelling of motor oil and whiskey, slamming a cabinet hard enough to crack a glass. Then his eyes opened. "Mark?" His voice was almost nothing. I called an answer. 15 years of speeches jammed in my throat. Linda stepped back to the wall, giving me room. I walked to the bed. In my jacket pocket was the tissue from Call's memorial, folded so many times it felt like cloth. I held it because I needed to hold something. My father's fingers twitched. "Didn't think you'd come," he said. Neither did I. A tear slid sideways into his beard. I was no good. I looked at the Jell-O, the plastic spoon, the hospital bracelet tight around his wrist. "No," I said. "You weren't." His eyes closed like the words had found their mark. "Your mama deserved better. You did too." The anger didn't vanish. It changed shape. It stopped being a wall and became something I could carry. "I can't fix what you broke," I said. "I know. And I'm still angry. I know. But I'm here." His hand moved again. After a long moment, I put my palm over his fingers. They were cold and light, Behind me, Linda was crying without a sound. I turned and saw her trying to stay invisible. My wife, who had been wrong to hide this. My wife, who had been afraid. My wife, who had still walked me to the room I was too wounded to enter. I reached for her. She hesitated, then took my hand. Her fingers were rough and warm. I gurney rolled past in the hall, wheels clicking over the threshold seam. Nobody said forgiveness. Nobody said family. But, for the first time in years, the silence was empty. 3 weeks later, Linda and I sat in a counselor's office with a tissue box between us and a clock ticking too loudly. We did not fix 23 years and 50 minutes. We stumbled. We went quiet. Linda shredded a tissue in her lap and said, "I thought hiding it was mercy." The counselor asked what I heard. I swallowed. That she didn't trust me with the truth. Linda nodded. Eyes wet. Then I said, and I didn't trust her enough to ask without putting her on trial. No one called us healed. We paid at the front desk and stepped into a cold afternoon that smelled like rain on pavement. On the way home, I pulled into the grocery store. "Mark?" she asked. "Just a minute." I bought daisies from a plastic bucket by the register. The cashier wrapped them in thin paper, and they felt heavier than flowers should. At the cemetery, damp grass darkened our shoes. We found Call's stone near the maple tree. I set the daisies down, my takeout coffee cooling in my other hand. "I'm sorry I was there," Linda whispered. I looked at his name cut into granite, at the friend who had known the younger, louder, less careful version of me. "He would like you," I said. "Even now." She gave a small, broken laugh. We sat on the stone bench nearby. Wind moved through the cemetery grass. A crumpled tissue showed in her coat pocket. After a while, her hand slid across the cold stone until her fingers touched mine. I didn't grab on right away. Then I turned my palm up. Her hand settled into it. Rough from washing and worry, warm and real. The empty chair from that morning still lived somewhere inside me. Maybe it always would. But this time, beside my grief, there was no empty space. There was my wife, breathing quietly next to me. For now, that was enough.